One of the age-old tools that all prosecutors have to investigate any crime, including cost overruns, is a grand jury subpoena. Today, however, in Washington, an activist judge has taken that tool away from us. By inserting himself and preventing the grand jury from even obtaining, let alone hearing evidence, he has neutered the grand jury's ability to investigate crime. As a result, Jerome Powell today is now bathed in immunity, preventing my office from investigating the Federal Reserve. This is wrong, and it is without legal authority.
Now, similarly,
did you just see that? That was Jeanine Pirro. She is Donald Trump's own chosen U.S. attorney. She is supposed to be winning. Instead, she just stood at a podium and threw a public temper tantrum. Why? Because a federal judge just shut her down completely. The judge looked at every piece of evidence her office brought, every single document, every argument, and the judge wrote in black and white that the government produced, quote, essentially zero evidence of any crime. Zero, not a little, not almost enough. Zero, and here is what they are not telling you on mainstream television tonight. This is not just one case. This is not an isolated loss. What we are watching right now is a paternal eagle wall being built around our democracy by judges, by grand juries, and by brave prosecutors inside that very same Department of Justice, case by case, week by week. They are stopping Trump's revenge machine. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what is happening and exactly why it matters for every American who believes in the rule of law.
all part of the resistance against Donald Trump's efforts to indict and prosecute his political rivals or critics. We've got the latest example with Chief Judge of everything in the D.C. federal court, all grand jury processes, is Chief Judge Boasberg. He determined that the Trump administration can't even meet the basic low threshold to have grand jury subpoenas survive, this time against Donald Trump's political critic, not even a critic, political opponent in the Federal Reserve Chairman Jay Powell. It's extraordinary. I can't put too fine a point on how extraordinary the chief judge of a district finding that grand jury subpoenas were improperly issued, how extraordinary that is. But let me put
this in plain language. What you just heard is a legal expert saying that what Judge Boasberg did quashing grand jury subpoenas almost never happens. A chief judge does not step in and say, stop, this is wrong, unless something is seriously, fundamentally wrong. Here is what the judge actually found, according to AP News. Judge Boasberg wrote that the government produced, I am quoting directly now, essentially zero evidence to suspect Chair Powell of a crime. Zero. He went further. He said there was abundant evidence that the real purpose of those subpoenas was, again, his words, to harass and pressure Powell into cutting interest rates. That is what Trump wanted, lower interest rates before an election. And when he did not get them, his Justice Department went after Powell with fake legal threats. Now here is what this actually means for you. The head of the Federal Reserve, the person who controls our interest rates, our mortgages, your retirement savings, was being targeted not because he broke the law, but because he would not do what Donald Trump told him to do. That is not justice. That is a mob boss move. But here is the incredible part of this story. This is not the only time this has happened. This is part of a larger pattern, and the New York Times documented it just this past week on March 16th. Their headline reads, Trump's effort to target rivals stall as judges cut short basic investigative steps. Judges, grand juries, U.S. attorneys from within the system, they are all doing the same thing. They are all saying no, and we are going to show you every single one of those cases. Right now, look at this list. This is Trump's enemies list. These are real Americans, public servants who he tried to destroy with the power of the United States government. Letitia James, the New York Attorney General, 3 separate grand juries said no 3 times. James Comey, the case was thrown out entirely because the prosecutor was illegally appointed. 6 members of Congress, including Senator Mark Kelly, a decorated Navy pilot, indicted for reminding troops they have a constitutional duty. The grand jury said absolutely not. Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve Chair, subpoenas quashed. zero evidence of any crime, and John Brennan, former CIA director, prosecutors on the ground are reportedly refusing to bring the charges their MAGA bosses are demanding, case by case, name by name. The system is holding, for now.
Let's start with the political opponents of Donald Trump. They didn't choose to be. Donald Trump picked them out for various reasons. New York Attorney General Letitia James, former FBI Director James Comey, 6 members of Congress, Senate, and the House who made a 90-second video to remind the troops, remind the military that they have their own constitutional duty to uphold the Constitution and not follow illegal orders. California Senator Adam Schiff, former director of the CIA, John Brennan. Each one of them has had some judge, jury, grand jury, or U.S. attorney bail them out and stand steadfast for the rule of law in our justice system. Let's start with the Judge Curry. Judge Curry, out of the Eastern District of Virginia, or sitting by designation there, she determined that the now disgraced, resigned out of the Department of Justice, Lindsay Halligan, was illegally appointed, and threw out the indictments of New York Attorney General Letitia James for mortgage fraud, James Comey for lying to Congress. They tried 2 more times to get Letitia James indicted, one in Norfolk, Virginia, one in Richmond, Virginia. 2 separate grand juries said no. In fact, one of the 2 grand juries wanted to announce, and did announce in open court, that they refused to indict, based on that evidence, the New York Attorney General. We're talking about low bars here, basics of prosecution here, but nobody believes the Department of Justice. In order to get an indictment, you have to show to a grand jury, first of all, you have to bring it properly, that there's probable cause that you will sustain a conviction through appeal. You have to prove to a jury, just on the lower standard, that you have probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed, and convince a jury of that based on the evidence that you present without the defense present. And they're not even able to do that. So that's the Judge Curry, former.
This is Epstein's Zorro Ranch in New Mexico. Right now, today, state officials are on the ground searching this property, looking for evidence of what happened there. According to documents already released by the Dodge itself, Epstein allegedly ordered the bodies of 2 foreign girls buried on this property, and that is in the government's own files. And according to James Comer on Fox News, Trump's Department of Justice under Bill Barr told New Mexico investigators to stop searching this property in 2019. The question that nobody in the Trump administration wants to answer is why. Why would you tell investigators to stop? What were they getting too close to? Those are not conspiracy theories. Those are the exact questions a bipartisan Congress is now demanding answers to under oath. Let me tell you what we learned today and why it matters. A Republican chairman, James Comer, used his legal authority to subpoena Trump's own attorney general, not because Democrats forced him to, not because the media pushed him, but because Pam Bondi refused to cooperate voluntarily on one of the most serious investigations in modern American history. That is the story, not a partisan attack, but a Republican overseeing a Republican, forcing transparency on a Republican administration. James Comer also said publicly on Fox News that Trump's Dodge told New Mexico to stand down from the Epstein Ranch investigation in 2019. The Hill confirmed that reporting on March 11, 2026, and also confirmed that
Now, for 99% of my 35-year-plus career, the federal government could always be trusted. We even had a doctrine related to it, the doctrine of regularity. They could be trusted. You may not agree with them. You might slap your forehead with your hand on some of their maneuvers, but you didn't doubt their ethics. You didn't doubt their veracity, their candor, their truthfulness. Right? When they said that they represented the United States of America, that's gone. That's gone. No judge takes at face value anything that the Department of Justice says. Nothing. Especially and certainly senior leadership in Washington. Now, what we're watching are judges going out of their way now, and this is in the last several months, complimenting assistant U.S. attorneys, the junior lawyers, if they feel that they've been doing their job properly, haven't been lying to the court, haven't been misleading the court, have been prepared in court, understand the law and the facts in court, don't try to deceive the court, are candid with the court and uphold their own oath. They're literally complimenting them in court, in courtrooms, in orders, in opinions, in postings to the docket, on the federal docket we can all see. Why are they doing that? To encourage a resistance in the form of doing their job. Now there's
Epstein's accountant, Richard Kahn, came before this same committee under oath just days ago. Witnesses, documents, depositions, the record is being built. And here is my opinion, stated clearly, based on all of this verified reporting, when Congress passed the Epstein files. Transparency Act nearly unanimously, and the president signed it. That was a promise to the American people, and that promise has not been kept. The DOJ released millions of pages, but with redactions beyond what the law allows. Bondi admitted there were errors, but errors do not erase names. Errors do not explain ist and down order. In 2019, and errors do not explain why the Attorney General of the United States, appointed by the very president who promised transparency, refused to walk into a congressional hearing voluntarily. This is not just about Epstein anymore. This is about whether the rule of law applies equally to everyone, whether powerful people, no matter who they are, can hide behind redacted documents and avoided subpoenas, and whether the promises made to victims of child sex trafficking mean anything at all. The answer to those questions will be written on April 14th, when Pam Bondi, under oath, has to answer. We will be there, and so should you.